Hi everyone, it's Heidi from flutterbyheidi.co.uk. I'm Heidi Smith. I'm an independent Stampin' demonstrator based in the United Kingdom, and today I thought I'd share with you some of the lovely Happiness Abounds bundle, another project to go with those. I've done several with these. I think it's the most beautiful stamp and die set and gorgeous paper that goes with it. So I thought, when I was looking at this, I thought, you know what, it's flowers, so we need a basket. So what better way to create a little gift box than with this lovely paper and coordinating stamps. As you can see, you know, it's actually very straightforward. It comes from a single sheet of A4 cardstock. I have added some extra scraps to the inside, but the actual you know, the card itself, the box itself, apart from the lining, can be made from the single sheet, and so you could just add scraps that you happen to have for those. The paper I've used is in the same Hues of Happiness suite, and the ribbon I'll show you, that's a bit of seam binding that I've just coloured. So the stamp set, you can see here, you've got this beautiful anemone, a couple of roses, and another, what I think is probably an anemone, little bunches of flowers, and some super sentiments, useful for all sorts of occasions. You know, wishing you all the happiness you can imagine. I mean, that would be perfect for a wedding. Congratulations. Lovely one. Anyway, you can read. So those are the sentiments. And inside, I've got my dies. You have this lovely one that creates a background texture. And as well as the ones that cut out the stamped images, you've got these two edge dies. One creates a little sort of like a notepad edge, and the other one that I've used on here creates an aperture that you could thread some, pop some thread through if you wanted to. The other lovely thing about this suite is the paper. So here we go. You've got, I haven't cut it down because it is, you need to see the full sheet to get the sort of, because you've got this lovely rainbow effect of colours. So here we go. Here's the papers. As you can see, lovely rainbow on one side, almost like a gouache kind of finish. Lovely rainbow of flowers on the one side, and we've got those little sort of cross patterns, and that's what I'm going to use for this one. And more flowers, and again another sort of, you know, texture on the back. Now this one here is again lovely, so this kind of complements the other one, but just in the other colours. So if you imagine, where is it? Yeah. So here we go, that's the kind of full spectrum, and so that's got a dark navy blue background, and this one has got the kind of painted background. And then this final sheet is absolutely beautiful because the dies cut out the flowers on this sheet. So you've got two sheets, these ones covering all of the colours, and all of these flowers and the leaves coordinate with the dies. So that's what I've actually used. So if you're not into kind of colouring, and that, I know it doesn't suit everyone, but you can, you know, still get beautiful images like these, which are simply die cut from the paper. And I make use of every single scrap. These are from the edges, so I haven't even wasted the edges on the side there. So that's my box. I thought I've used the lovely Coastal Cabana for this. The colours that are in the paper, you know, they don't cover all of the shades, but obviously you can coordinate between Coastal Cabana and Pool Party. You can add in a bit of Bermuda Bay if you want to. One of the colours is Flirty Flamingo, which I'm going to use, but I'm going to use our Blushing Bride to go with that. And I thought I'd use you know, there's the other part of this same piece of paper. So you'll see here I've used this end for these, so this time I'm going to use this end for the others. Okay, and I'm going to contrast that with a bit of Flirty Flamingo as well. So that top layer that I've added on here, you can just see I've added in some Bermuda Bay. Hopefully you can see perhaps the contrast. So I shall use a bit of Flirty Flamingo for that, just because I happen to have some on hand. So let's get started. One thing I haven't done is coloured the ribbon already, but I will show you how I colour that as well. And there are two ways that you could actually colour the ribbon that I'll talk you through. So the first thing I'm going to do is do some of those layers. So that top piece. I've pre-cut some of my layers already. That's just for sort of expediency. So I've actually got two layers. I've got one that mats my white, and I've got another one that's the same size as that, which is for the inside of the box. So this piece is 12.8 by 5.8. And this one is 12.5 by 5.5, as is the other piece of Flirty Flamingo for the inside. I've got two pieces of card for the inside, if you want to layer a bit of contrast, and those are, they're about, I should have actually done Flirty Flamingo, Blushing Bride even. They're sort of 5.6 by 7.5 or thereabouts. So those are just for lining if I decide to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do, because it's I don't want to stamp and then find I've messed it up, is I'm going to die cut that top edge. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to use the other die cut edge to show you what it looks like when it's actually punched out. Now on this you'll see that one edge has a cutting edge at the top there and the other one doesn't. So what I'm going to do is line that up on the top of my piece of cardstock, and then I'm just going to add a couple of pieces of tape, because I don't, having lined that up, I don't want that to move. And then when you pop that through, if you imagine this is my plate, pop it through at an angle. If you put it straight through, it's not as good for your die. Likewise, putting it all the way through, you'll get some distortion. You put it just through at an angle, and that'll help you get a really nice, and it'll cut really well. And also, as I say, it's better for your die. And when I'm doing something like this, I do tend to do the die cutting first. You can see that there has die cut beautifully, and that top edge, if it's still attached at all at one end, just snip, and there we go. So pop my die away. And now what I have done is already die cut some of these flowers. So I've taken some of my DSP, and what I've done with one of those sheets is I've literally just roughly cut all of these out so that they're ready to hand. And as I die cut a few, I die cut a few more. You can see, including those edge ones. I haven't actually die cut any edge ones. I don't think I'd actually got any edge ones with these. You could cut them by hand if you wanted to, but I would honestly say they are probably easier to do. There's an edge one in a deeper colour. With the dies, it just makes it so easy to do, and as I say, you'll end up with lots of bits and pieces in there. Perhaps I've got some. You see here, you just die cut those, and you've got some lovely roses to add to the front of your project, or to any other project. Just keep them ready to hand, and this makes very quick and easy card making. So these are a photopolymer stamp set. So I'm going to do my stamping actually in the deeper shade. Although I'm going to make my box in Blushing Bride, I'm going to do my stamping in Flirty Flamingo. There we go. There's my sentiment. And because I'm using my Stampin' Pierce mat to make sure I get a good impression, I'm just popping a bit of scrap paper there because I don't want to make a mess of my. Oh, there's a hair there. It's okay, it's underneath my stamp. I don't want to make a mess of my Stampin' Pierce mat, so I'm just going to stamp that large image there and come in with the rose kind of one. Like so. Then to get that dimension on the top there, I'm just taking my bone folder, and then I'll pop a couple of, just happen to have mini dimensionals to hand, and that just supports the middle, and what that allows the petals to kind of then shape and sort of drape around that image. So I'm just going to sort of pop that, so you can see slightly. With the other one I made a bit of a mistake. I had it hanging over too far on the edge, so when you open the box, if you're not careful, you'll distort it. So I'm just making sure that one comes down a little bit lower. So there's my layer for the top. I'm going to pop that onto my Flirty Flamingo, And that is actually all the stamping done. When you add this layer, just make sure you avoid that sort of perforated top. And a bit of wet glue is always good because it gives you a little bit more wriggle room to adjust that. Okay, so I'll put these pieces to one side. I'll want those in a little while to add to the front of our box. Okay, so now on to the box construction itself. So take a piece of A4 cardstock, and the first thing you're going to do is cut that at 15 centimetres, like so, and keep that piece because you're going to need that in a moment. You're going to score on and trim it down to 28. As I should have said. We are going to score at 7.5, at 13.5, at 21, and at 27. Now you then want to turn it and just pop your short section at the top there, and you're going to score the fourth section down. So that's number 1, 2, 3, 4 at 3.5. So just in that section here, and use your little line on the side of your trimmer to do that. And again, flip it round, and again with that same section, I'm just going to turn that a touch more at the top there. And we also want to score on the short at 1 centimetre on each side. Like so. Now we're going to come in with our ruler and a scoring tool to do the other score lines, and also to mark the lines for cutting. Now if you're new to box making, use a bit of scrap paper or scrap card, make yourself a template. You can see here, that's how I double check that everything's going to go together before I waste my good stuff. But if you just take your time, I would always say with a tutorial for anybody, and I do the same, is I watch it through once before I start making, so I know what it is I'm going to do. So I'm just making sure that my scoring tool is at where this narrow section is, and where the 1 centimetre is and crosses over. And I'm just going to score down there. And I'm going to do that in 4 places. So again, and I'm also going to come across about 1 centimetre and score again just along in parallel to that. I'm going to score again in parallel across here, and then I'm going to do my other diagonal as well. So from the point where it crosses up to 1 centimetre in, and then, as I say, just take that. And it doesn't have to be precise on this second score line, it's a cutting guide basically. So again, where it joins up to the top 1 centimetre in, and if you want to, make yourself a mark if that makes it easier for you. Sometimes, you know, having a little pen mark means it's easier for you to see on your ruler. So mine happens to have some sort of parallel lines already on it, which can help. There we go. So now you've done your scoring, we're going to get our trimmer. We're not going to get a trimmer at all. We're going to get our scissors out. So the one with the short score section is our lid. So we're just going to cut and slightly notch out. Now you could corner around those if you wanted to. I'm just coming in with my scissors and just coming in at a slight angle on the side. And the same on the edge here. Now on that second score line, the one that's closest to the edge, I'm going to cut down along the bottom. Now you could leave that complete if you wanted to. that will just means it comes further up the side of the box. But I'm just trimming it down so I've got sort of an even tab for cutting and gluing. Okay, so you're going to then notch out these as well. Now also take a bigger notch. They're going to be covered up by the inner panel as you go along, and this top one you want to kind of notch out at more of an angle, because that's coming into an angle you don't want it poking up. So do the same on the other side. So straight down that base and coming down that score line across that centre section, and then down here as well, and just notch out on the sides there. So in a moment I'll just show you that so you can have a look when you've done yours, so you can do a bit of a comparison. Okay, so you're going to end up with something like this. So you'll have the narrow score line here, and you'll have these sections here. And once you've trimmed that, then come in and score them. Now you'll see here I haven't come quite, that's poking up above, so I want to trim that away. So just come off at an angle like so. So what you don't want is that interfering with where you're going to tuck your box, your lid in. Give those a really good reinforce. And this is one where if you've reinforced your lines before you did your diagonal scores, that's fine. It just means that will have an extra score line in, but it really doesn't matter. Again, have a look at where that's coming in and make sure it's not going to snag on that score line. I just need to, with both of those, come slightly more. Okay, and again. And then we're going to reinforce those score lines like so. So now we've done that, we're ready to cut our DSP to add on. First of all, you want to cut your sides. So the piece that you cut off first of all is what you're going to use for your sides. So this is already cut at 6 centimetres, and those sides are 6 centimetres wide by 7.9, so just under the 8 centimetres. So you're going to cut 2 of those, like so. So those are the 2 side panels, and as I mentioned, you might want you'll want 2 for the inside. Now what you can do is use this last little bit and cut it in half and cut it down slightly. So if you bring it down just to about 5.7, and if you cut it in half, it won't come all the way down to the bottom, but it will create you an inner piece which will finish it off. So this is 14 centimetres, so if you cut that at 7, you've then got a choice. You know, you can use those if you want to for the inside, or you can use a separate piece as well. So you've cut this. We now want to cut our DSP. So I'm going to cut my DSP to 7 centimetres. Actually, I'm going to cut it at 7.2, and that's because my sides are going to be around about 7.2. Just check. Now my sides actually are going to be 7.4, so let's cut that at 7.4, like so. Now for the front, so I'm looking at my notes, I want a piece that's 12 by 7, so I'm going to take it from the front here with that that pink, so I'm going to cut it at 12 and then trim it down to 7 centimetres. So that's the piece that I'm going to cut down for the front of my card. I then want a piece for each of the sides, and as I said, you'll see that you just want those slightly shorter, hence I cut it slightly bigger, because then you're only cutting into a single piece all the way through. And those pieces of DSP are going to be about 5.5 centimetres. So you can choose which end you want to take those from. I'm just going to take those as they come off that end, like so. And obviously you could always cut a piece for the back if you wanted to as well. So those are my two sides with my two panels, like so. And this one for the front, you're going to want to just trim that, because obviously it is angled. So grab yourself either an erasable marker or a pencil. And with this, for the front, you're going to mark it at 2.3 centimetres. So if this is the top, so decide which orientation you're going to have it. Line it up at 2.3 and just create a little mark. And then again on the other side. And then all I'm going to do is line up that mark in my trimmer, like so, and cut that diagonal. And you'll notice I'm cutting from the flat edge to the point. It's always easier to do it that way, because otherwise if you come into the point, you'll sometimes, you'll kind of crush the point. If that makes sense. As you come in, it doesn't cut cleanly. So there's my front piece as well. So while our card is nice and flat, now's the time to add our layers. So if you remember that this is going to tuck in, that's the orientation we want our top lid layer. Can't find my words today. And just layer that on. Obviously much easier to do while it's flat. Then it's at this opposite end that we're going to want our front layer. Now what I would recommend you do is double check that you've cut that. I didn't. Double check you've cut that correctly before you put it on. I'm just going to double check that these are the right pieces, that they're about the right size. They are, before I put my DSP on. And once I put my DSP on, I'm actually going to then add these pieces to this tab. Now you might want to use Stampin' Seal Plus for this, up to you entirely. I find generally that for this one, because I'm gluing at an angle, I might want a bit of wriggle room. Or use some red tape where you've got a liner and you can line it, and you can just remove part of it until it's properly aligned. If you've got the time, Tombow will do a great job for you. Again, right there. And this is where having those extra layers on the inside help, because those will secure these tabs in place as well. So once those are in place, flip it over and you're going to add adhesive to these 4 tabs. Hopefully you can see just that one at the bottom there. And I would recommend having your bone folder to hand as well. And all I'm going to do is come up and glue that in place. The same on the other side. And on each of those sides. And while it's still kind of damp, just pop your... Oh, and I haven't done my hole for my... Pop your lid in and just make sure that you've left enough space, because if you've been slightly out on your scoring, you just want to make sure that that lid actually fits in there properly. So what I'd forgotten to do is actually mark the centre of that to add my ribbon into. And I said there were 2 ways. So I'm going to mark at 6.5 centimetres. And I have only got a narrow hole punch, so actually it isn't going to be too bad. I'm just going to come in and pop a hole in there. And with your ribbon, you can colour it one of 2 ways. You can either take one of our spritzers. You'll see here, this is how I coloured my other one, and add some rubbing alcohol and some of our re-inker and colour ribbon that way. Or you can take blender pens and you can colour them with your blender pens as well. Or you can obviously just leave it white. You know, it's not, you know, you don't need to colour it. And actually, because the white's on the front, that'll work fine. So all I've done is just taken probably about sort of 4 inches of ribbon and just popped that through on a little loop. You can see I'm going to take a little bit of Stampin' Seal Plus and just come away from the edge slightly, but just pop a bit in there, and that'll hold that tab down. And now all I need to do is find my piece of Flirty Flamingo, which I cut before. And if you remember, this was the slightly smaller one, the 12.5 by 7.5, not even 12.5 by 7.5, by 5.5 I think it was. And just add some adhesive to that. And the reason you don't want that too narrow is because as those flaps fold in, you don't want them catching at all. And just put that down. And as I mentioned with these, you just pop them on the side there. As I said, the slightly shorter ones, hopefully you can see, they don't come quite to the bottom, but they're close enough. So it all depends on whether you want to line with a contrast colour, which I think is actually rather nice. That deeper shade. Let's put some adhesive on both of those. And as I said, that will help just to cover up, and it'll also help keep those tabs in place, making it really secure. And you pop them in, leave a little gap at the very top. Just use your bone folder to press that glue down in place. And then the last thing to do is to add some decoration to the front, which I should have done while it was flat. But as you can see, I'm just going to add those just because I felt it needed a little something on the front there, and I wasn't quite sure what. So I thought, well, actually, if I add a couple more of the roses, it kind of almost adds a bit of a cascade to the front. And again, you just add some dimensionals onto the back there, or even one dimensional is fine. And there we have our pretty basket shaped box using Happiness Abounds, Hues of Happiness Sweet, and I've got one there in my Coastal Cabana, and I've got one in Blushing Bride. Do you have a preference? Which do you think? Actually, I wonder what would happen. Oh gosh, I might have to make more of those and see if they'll actually tessellate together. Come back and see me again soon. And if you'd like to purchase any of the products you've seen, pop along to my shop at heidismith.stampinup.net, or use the links below in this video, or on my blog at flutterbyheidi.co.uk. I really appreciate it when people shop with me, and likewise, if you don't already, please subscribe to my videos, hit that notification bell as well, because that does make a difference. Thank you for watching. Bye.